Hello, my name is Jakub Bienias. I'm a PhD student at the University of Łódź. On my PhD, I'm dealing with the integrative taxonomy and distribution of myriapods in Poland. Today's topic of my presentation is the case of two millipede species in Poland, Poldesmus angustus, which is new species for Poland, and Ophiodesmus albonanus, which is very rare species in Poland. We'll start with Poldesmus angustus. This is one member of the family Poldesmidae. There are several species across Europe from this genus, mostly externally very similar. For example, here in Poland we have Poldesmus complanus, which is very common, and Poldesmus inconstans, which is more rare, as well as Poldesmus denticulatus. Only few species in Polish fauna can be very easily identified externally. One of the examples is Poldesmus polonicus, which has very striking coloration that makes it very easy to identify with naked eye. But with other species like Poldesmus angustus and the most similar Poldesmus complanatus in Polish fauna, it can be more tricky. That's why the identification goes with the comparison of gonopods, but about this later. These two species have had very different distribution. Poldesmus angustus was mostly Western European in distribution, and Poldesmus complanatus Western and Central European. However, in recent years, the Poldesmus angustus is expanding on the east very rapidly, as you can see on this chart from the Edafo base. And here are the new locations of Poldesmus angustus in Poland that are in red. Blue is Ophiodesmus albonanus, which is, as I mentioned before, the other species that I will talk about later. And the green are the locations that were sampled for myriapods recently, and the Poldesmus angustus or Ophiodesmus albonanus were not found. So as we can see, there is quite a lot of the new localities of this species Poldesmus angustus in Poland, mostly from the northern and western and southern sides. The only other species of Poldesmus that was found with Poldesmus angustus was in Sopot, and it was Poldesmus denticulatus, which is a little bit smaller species. Here are the habitats where the species were found. Here is the habitat in Sopot, which is Park Północny. This is park with quite some natural habitats and more anthropogenic habitats. And Żabie Doły, which near Bytom, which is the site very heavily influenced by human activities. It is post-industrial area that was revitalized. This species conquers new habitats along with human interventions mostly, and by urbanized areas, from which it probably can disperse to more natural habitats. As I mentioned before, externally the Poldesmus complanatus in Polish fauna can be very similar to Poldesmus angustus. However, Poldesmus angustus gonopods, as you can see here are Poldesmus angustus gonopods, and here are Poldesmus complanatus gonopods. The gonopod structure is very different. Here is the specimen from the Sopot from Poland, as well as its gonopods. We also did some molecular analysis. It is very basic and very straight, but we compared the sequences of Polish specimens, as you can see here, with the specimens from the rest of the world, basically, because the species is invasive in some parts, for example in Canada or United States, and our specimen corresponds with the bin of the specimens in Germany, Norway, United States, and many other parts of Europe. Of course, there are few bins of this species that can be distinguished, but which can be the lead about its molecular history for the later studies. The Polydesmus angustus can compete with Polydesmus companatus, which is the most common Polish native species, which in many habitats, for example, here we have the 𝒂𝒏𝒈𝒔 forest, which is very primal and ancient forest. It can, we don't know what effect it will have on the Polish populations of other species from the genus Polydesmus, especially in the habitats like this, where there are many species that were very rare or were not present in the habitat of Polydesmus angustus in the Western Europe, like Mastigophorophyllon saxonicum or Rosulus vilnensis, or even 𝒂𝒏𝒈𝒂𝒏𝒂𝒕𝒖🔪 in many parts. Polydesmus angustus can also be pest of strawberries and some other crops. And now we will talk about the other species of Ophiodesmus albonanus, which is very small, pale white species. It was first discovered in Poland in the Warsaw, in the glass house of the in the Warsaw, and it was single male. It was described by Wojciech Jędryczkowski as tropical species. However, this is not the case. Here is the specimen from Gdynia that you could see on the map before. And here are the gonopods, very different from any other millipede species out there. And this is the distribution of this species, mostly, as you can see, the Western Europe. It is probably native not to some tropical areas, as Jędryczkowski suggested, but to chalk, the ancient forest on chalk, as you can see in this picture. And the only other similar species is Macrosternodesmus pallicola. Externally, both are very similar. However, the gonopods of males are totally different. Of course, when it comes to the citizen science, both species, in case of Polydesmus angustus, there are many more findings because it's much larger. However, many of these findings are not reliable, because as I mentioned many times before, the most reliable identification goes with the gonopods structure, which is not possible from the photos alone. So it could be mistaken with many other species, and in fact, when it comes to the records that I found in Poland, most of the specimens couldn't be reliably identified as Polydesmus angustus. Most of them could be only identified to genus level. There are some juveniles. So that citizen science is, you can say very limited when it comes to this species. In this species, the situation is similar, but it can be only mistaken with Macrosternodesmus that I mentioned before. And one of the examples that citizen science is limited in case of the millipede species is, for example, this record from India, when someone identified this specimen as Polydesmus angustus, which in fact maybe at first glance is similar, but this is the totally different family of polydesmids. Thank you for your attention.